Well, good morning. How are we doing today? Good morning, Brian. Mr. Andy, always good to see you on there. Good morning, Frank. Andy, how's the weather in Tucson? Frank, Brian, I'm not sure if I want to ask how the weather is where you're at. Seems like you folks are really having some winter. It's a tad bit cold, Andy. How's the weather in Tucson? We are going to have to do something a little bit different this morning than I had intended. I had a really great presentation on California for you this morning. And there is a problem with Facebook and screen sharing. So everybody's going to have to look at my smiling face this morning while we talk a little bit about California. And if you would like, I'm not going to restart the program for everybody, but we'll do a live program later with the PowerPoint. I had some great historic photos, the well-laid plans of mice and men, if you will.
Say hello to a new friend on an old road. Take a two-lane trip of memories into mysteries unknown. Come along for the ride. Jim Hinckley's America. Jim Hinckley's America.
I'm really kind of disappointed, guys. Like say, gosh darn, I get frustrated sometimes. I spent quite a bit of time yesterday morning rounding up some great historic photos of Route 66 in California, and this technology stuff is sometimes it's for the birds, but it beats the hell out of tin cans and string, I suppose. Well, good morning, amigos. How's everyone doing? Watching a little bit of the weather report, it looks like many of you are suffering through some frosty temperatures and lots of snow this week. So I thought we would dream of warmer climates. At this point, on my PowerPoint, you would have a picture of Needles, California in summer with the bank thermometer showing 124 degrees. So we're going to have to visualize some of this morning. This week we're on Coffee with Jim. We're wrapping up our tour along Route 66 with an odyssey across Southern California. And even though a lot of this drive is across the big empty that is the Mojave Desert, I'm going to only have time to provide just a few highlights and I hope a bit of road trip inspiration, especially when we get on the backside of this COVID lockdown stuff. The drive from Needles on the Colorado River to Santa Monica, in my humble opinion, this is the most diverse Route 66 drive of any of the 8 states along that highway corridor. You have ghost towns, you have a desert wilderness, you have one of the largest metropolitan areas in the United States, and you have a scenic byway surrounded by a major city. And you have more diverse restaurants than I could try in a single lifetime. At this point on the screen, I would have had a map of Route 66 in California, and then I would bring up a 1950 postcard of the Colorado River showing the 2 different bridges on the river. Well, anyway, as fans and followers know, I get almost claustrophobic in any town with more than 3 stoplights. And I suppose that I've spent too many years wandering the empty places. And I'm one of the dry roasted nuts. I just enjoy the sections of Route 66 in the Mojave Desert. And this might surprise you, but thanks to Scott Piotrowski, he's a guide to all things Route 66 in Los Angeles that I highly recommend. And he's the president of the California Historic Route 66 Association. If you really want a great tour in LA, drop me a note and I'll get you Scott's contact information. But thanks to him, I found ways to enjoy Route 66 in the big city, even in Los Angeles. And I'll tell you more about that in just a few minutes. And that's our opening teaser, if you will. At this point, like I say, the postcard with the bridges that I had showed the 1916 National Old Trails Road Bridge, then the 1897 Railroad Bridge that was converted to highway traffic in 1947 when a new railroad bridge was built across the Colorado River. Anyway, you can't cry over spilled milk now, can we? Let's take care of a bit of business with a shout out to our sponsors. First up, the amazing Wagon Wheel Motel in Cuba, Missouri. I can never say enough about this wonderful little gem. And suffice to say, an overnight stay is on every one of our Route 66 trips. Next up, we have Dale Beutel's Route 66 tours. If you want to experience the very best of Route 66 and you want to experience the open road on a Harley Davidson, you can't find a better group than Dale Beutel. Daniel and some of the others are just intimate with motorcycles. They all have an intimate knowledge of Route 66 and offer a first-rate experience. And that brings us to Uranus Fudge Company and General Store. Aside from superb fudge and an ample dose of juvenile humor, there's lots of tasty goods to sample, and the world's only circus sideshow museum. Last but definitely not least, the Roadrunner Lodge, Tucumcari, New Mexico. The attention to detail transports the guest to a luxury hotel circa 1964, but with all the modern conveniences the traveler has come to expect. And of course, I need to give a shout out to Woody and Joe and the boys of the Road Crew for our theme song. Roadcrew66.com. That's my go-to place when I need a bit of a road trip inspiration. We get the show on the excuse me. We get the show on the road with the Colorado River crossing. Construction of I-40 really transformed this area, but the sharp-eyed traveler will catch a glimpse of the past. When you're going into California, on the left side of the highway, there's an arched bridge. That is the National Old Trails Bridge, the one that was built in 1916. It's still there, but now it carries pipeline instead of traffic. And as a bit of trivia, this bridge appears in the 1940 film adaptation of The Grapes of Wrath. Needles is the first community on Route 66 as you're going west into California. And poor old Needles. You know, I think everybody, including me, picks on poor old Needles. Years ago, when I was hauling hay out of Fort Mojave, we referred to it as Needless, California. I'm an old desert rat, but you can get too much of a good thing, and summer temperatures often exceed 120 degrees. A few years ago, I spoke at a Chamber of Commerce event about the economics of Route 66 tourism. The temperature that day was 125 degrees. And a lady showed me a picture of the bank thermometer from the week before. It showed 131. Most folks zip through town on I-40. A desperate few will actually spend the night and grab a quick meal at McDonald's. And with the exception of Fender's River Road Resort and the Wagon Wheel Restaurant, even most Route 66 enthusiasts really don't do much exploring. And that's a pity. Speaking of Fender's River Road Resort, Rosie, RV park, small motel. This is the only motel that is on Route 66, the National Old Trails Road, and the Colorado River. The old town is definitely down at the heel, but it's not dead, as evidenced by recent work on the historic theater. The fascinating museum across from the El Garces and Square, how busy restaurants are once COVID restrictions are lifted, and there's some real gems. Down across from the Wagon, a covered wagon downtown that has needles, there's a cottage camp that dates to the 1920s. It's now apartments. And if you look for it, you can find the 1930s Robinson Motel, also apartments. And did you know that Charles Schulz, his house is there? Charles Schulz was the creator of the Charlie Brown cartoon series. Take some time in Needles. Do a bit exploring, preferably when it's a little bit cooler. But things are picking up in Needles. I noticed that they're putting a roof on the old theater, and they're moving right along. A couple of years ago, a few blocks off Route 66, I found the charming Valenzuela's Cafe. The place looks like it might fall down if you sneeze, but the interior is a cozy time capsule. The food's pretty darn good, and it is one family owned since opening in 1952. The original alignment of Route 66 that was bypassed in 1931, it looped through Goffs and Finner. There isn't much left in Goffs. The exception is the historic school that was restored and transformed into an amazing museum by Dennis Cassaber. Unfortunately, Dennis recently passed away, and that's a real loss. Check out his books on the Mojave Road. That's a story for another day, but that historic 19th century road, that's been on my to-do list for a very, very long time. And I highly recommend the museum in Goffs. To find such a professionally operated and expansive museum just a few short miles from the middle of nowhere is a real surprise and a treat. And the restrooms are worthy something found at a Hilton hotel. The restrooms really will surprise you. Much of Route 66 between Essex and Amboy is closed, as a few bridges have washed out. And with that as an opening, I'd like to note that all along Route 66, the historic bridges are due for replacement. They're being replaced or they're closed. And the loss of these bridges changes the very, very nature of Route 66. If the schedule allows, I suggest a short detour into the Mojave National Preserve. At this point, picture a restored depot. I had a nice photo of the depot in Kelso to show you this morning. The highlight of a trip into the Mojave National Preserve is the sand dunes and the old depot in the ghost town of Kelso. The depot now serves the museum and as the visitor center for the Desert Preserve. On my last visit, the lunchroom was closed. Still, it's something to see as it was restored to an authentic 1930s appearance. As you might have guessed, Mitchell Caverns has been closed for most of the past year. But this is another little short but interesting detour. And during the months of summer, it offers a very pleasant respite from the searing heat. The long-closed Wayside Cafe in Essex is still standing. And aside from the post office, there isn't much else there. But of course, to be honest, there never was much in Essex. But it was a vital desert oasis for travelers. You know, I always joke about this. My pa said it was better to fill your head with useless knowledge than no knowledge at all. Here's a couple little tidbits for you. In the late teens, the Automobile Club of Southern California drilled a well at Essex and posted a sign advertising free water. The cafe and a few businesses sprouted up shortly afterwards, but the place was remote. In fact, after a story in the LA Times was published in 1977 that noted Essex was the last community in the lower 48 states to be without television, all 35 residents were invited to the Johnny Carson show. And then a company in Pennsylvania, they donated all the equipment needed so the town could have television service. Most of the so-called towns along Route 66 in the Mojave Desert were never more than wide spots on the road. And most were originally located to the south along the railroad and National Old Trails Road. When Route 66 was rerouted to its current course, the owners of businesses simply packed up and built new stores. Chambliss is one example. James Chambliss, he built his original store along the National Old Trails Road in about 1920. And then with the establishment of Route 66, he relocated and established Chambliss Camp. And by the late 1930s, it consisted of a grove of trees, a post office, gas station, motel cabins, a store, and a cafe. Another wide spot in the road. Amboy was an exception, though. Amboy was something. How many people are familiar with Amboy? The site was first developed as a water station for the railroad. And by 1858, there was a salt harvesting operation here and a few businesses that supplied area mines as well as mining explorations. With establishment of the National Old Trails Road, service businesses such as a garage, service stations, cabin rentals, cafes, all opened. And from the late 1940s until the bypass of Route 66 in the 1970s, Amboy was a boom town that literally never closed. And then within a few months of the bypass, pretty much every business in town closed. Just down the road of Spit and a Hop is Amboy Crater. Now, it's a fairly short hike, and it's interesting. I highly recommend it. The trail will loop behind the volcano and then into the crater from the backside that's blown out. There's also a trail along the rim. Do not attempt this during the heat of the day in summer, and never ever make this hike without telling someone where you're going and when you will be back. And please carry lots of water, even in the winter. A few years ago, several tourists died in the desert along that trail. How many people know about Ludlow? Ludlow today is less than a wide spot in the road. There's the motel, and I've never stayed at the motel. I don't know if anybody here has, but I've been told it's clean and basic. You register and pick up the key across the street at the gas station. And the Ludlow Cafe, well, it's nothing to write home about, but it's passable. But Ludlow really has a long and colorful history. Settlement here dates to the early 1870s. I have a great picture to show you of downtown Ludlow about 1900, and you would not believe the size of the town. I'm going to have to show that to you. Settlement here dates to the early 1870s. It was once a major railroad junction. The Tonopah and Tidewater Railroad connected prosperous mining towns like Rhyolite and Goldfield in the deserts of Nevada with the main line of the Southern Pacific at Ludlow. And then there was a smaller line that went down into the Bullion Mountains and the mines there. So Ludlow was a major supply center. And then with creation of the Arrowhead Highway and National Old Trails Road, there was an establishment of an expansive service industry. That really blew the economy up. And that was, of course, magnified with the creation of Route 66. But the closure of railroads and bypass of 66 has decimated the town. And Aside from a couple of businesses, nothing there really but empty highway, desert, and ruins. But here's a little something for you. When you go to Ludlow, turn at the cafe and drive back towards the railroad. Look for the signs that read Main Street. You're going to really be surprised, but there's a stretch of sidewalks and lots of vestiges showing that this was once a very, very prosperous and vibrant community in the desert. Photo ops and surprises all along Route 66 in the desert. Here's one for you. The Towering Roy's sign in Amboy, it was erected in 1959 and recently restored. It's one of the most photographed locations in the world for television commercials and magazine commercials, advertisement. Australian insurance companies, Dodge trucks, Russian vodka commercials, they've all been filmed there in recent years. A place that's really overlooked and should not be is Daggett. When you come into town, there's a little weird place that looks like a Swiss chalet, something out of the Keebler Elves. That was a visitor center about 80 years ago. Then it was a restaurant, and it's currently, I understand, being renovated. And there's a little market, rundown little market down in there. But that opened as a general store. The Desert Market opened in 1909, continuous operation. And just to the west is the long shuttered Stone Hotel. That was built in the 1870s. And there's a persistent local legend that Wyatt Earp managed the faro tables at the hotel. I don't know if that's true or not, but the family did own a ranch nearby. And John Muir's sister lived in town. So he was a frequent guest at the hotel. And Death Valley Scotty, he maintained a suite of rooms as an office. And we wouldn't want to forget Baghdad. Aside from a cemetery, a cement slab, and a forlorn tree, pretty much everything's gone in Baghdad. But here's some more frivolous trivia for you. Baghdad holds the record for lack of rain in the United States. From October 3rd, 1912 to November 8th, 1914, not one drop of rain fell. And the cafe there was the inspiration for the movie Baghdad Cafe. And to capitalize on the movie, a cafe in nearby Newberry Springs was renamed Baghdad Cafe. It remains a popular eatery for locals, movie buffs, and Route 66 enthusiasts. And I know when you zip through the desert on I-40 today, but you forget about things like Newberry Springs. You talk about a history. There is archaeological evidence that travelers on a trade route have camped there for more than 1,000 years. And even more amazing, recently it was discovered that people may have lived along the springs for more than 5,000 years. And that takes us to Barstow. Barstow, along the Route 66 corridor, is just lined with tarnished gems. But I got to give a shout out to one of my favorite Mexican restaurants, period, hands down. Jenny's Grill. I try to make sure that I always stop there. I cannot get enough of the enchiladas, the tacos, or the chili rellenos. Truly delicious. Aside from Jenny's, if you make one stop in town, it should be the Casa del Desorito, the historic Harvey House and Railroad Depot that opened in 1911. It now houses a railroad museum and an intriguing Route 66 Mother Road Museum. If you stop by, say howdy to Deb for me, and check out the gift shop as they have autographed books for sale. When you're driving from Barstow to Victorville, there's not much spectacular, but a lot of treasures in plain sight, like the beautiful Mojave River Bridge that opened in 1932. And since a lot of my travels center around food, Emma Jean's Hollenberger, that's across from the cement plant on the outskirts of Victorville. The burgers are highly recommended, and the restaurant opened in 1947. This is another one of those don't judge a book by the cover places. It's well worth a stop. Victorville has quite a few interesting places. One is the California Route 66 Museum, And there's some fascinating tarnished relics with an interesting history. Uh, Downtown, about a block off the Route 66 corridor, is the old Green Spot Motel. I had pictures for you, a then and now picture, and it's a rundown weekly rental place. Pretty rough around the edges. But this is the last remnant of once was a complex that included a restaurant and nightclub. Years ago, see, Victorville was where movie and television companies came to film westerns and sci-fi movies. It was a getaway for celebrities. And the Green Spot was the focal point. That was a resort. The rich and famous. And here's some more useless knowledge for you. Herman Makowitz and John Houseman, they stayed at the Green Spot and did a bit of drinking at the Green Spot nightclub. They were in town, holed up, writing the first draft for the Citizen Kane script. And we have Cajon Pass. I think we're all familiar with that if we've driven into LA. What a nightmare, huh? Not only do we have the San Andreas Fault running through the Cajon Pass, we have the transportation corridor connecting the high desert with the coast and villages. You have vestiges of the Spanish Trail, Mojave Road, Mormon Trail, National Trails Road, and the entire evolution of Route 66 in various alignments, all found in the pass. Service stations and businesses that started being built there in about 1915, 1916. And man, what can you say? From San Bernardino to LA, lots and lots to see. Like the site of the original McDonald's around San Bernardino, it's now a museum, the largest collection of McDonald's memorabilia and artifacts in the world. The owner is Albert Okura, founder of the Juan Pollo restaurant chain. He also happens to own most of Amboy. Well, he's got some pretty ambitious plans for what remains of that town. Okay, traffic is simply a part of life in Los Angeles. And Route 66 is an endless string of traffic lights from San Bernardino to Santa Monica. But following that old highway all the way to its western terminus at Lincoln and Olympic and then onto the pier is well worth the aggravation. If you drive it on Saturday morning, traffic is relatively light, except from downtown Los Angeles through Hollywood, Beverly Hills, and Santa Monica. Sunday morning early is best. I have driven from Pasadena to downtown Los Angeles on almost totally empty streets. I've even, in Highland Park, I was able to stand in the middle of the road and take pictures and not worry about traffic. Imagine that in Los Angeles. There's so many attractions, just like with Albuquerque. I'm going to have to make LA an entirely different program. You've got vintage gas stations built in the teens turned into museums. The Sycamore Inn originally opened in 1848. Lots and lots of vintage signs. And there are only two Madonna of the Trail statues along the Route 66 corridor. One is in Upland. And then, of course, you got the famous Wigwam Motel in Rialto. I was going to tell you and show you pictures of the Aztec Motel, and I will have those up. I'll get some pictures up. But this is a really neat place. It's closed, but it's being renovated. I hope they finish this and get it done. It's built in 1925, and its unique styling and architectural detail sparked a nationwide movement. Architects all over the United States mimicked this. You find it at the Beach and Yacht Club in La Jolla, the Mayan Hotel, Kansas City, and the Mayan Theater in Los Angeles. And there were dozens and dozens of companies launched to manufacture fixtures, tiles, and even furniture that copied those found at the hotel. And when you're driving through Azusa, Monrovia, Upland, Pasadena, you'll find sandwiched in between strip malls, mini marts, and modern office complexes, wonderful little gems, little time capsules. An example is at 1285 East Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena, the beautiful Howard Motor Company building. It was built in 1927 as a Packard dealership, and it retains its original Baroque facade. And the front window mimics the trademark shape of a Packard grill. And for a travel tip, here we go. For lodging, this is on Colorado Boulevard in Pasadena, the Saga Motor Hotel. It opened in 1959. It is quintessential mid-century California. Swimming pools, towering palm trees. It's such a time capsule, it is a popular site for the filming of movies as well as television shows. For me personally, I like it because it's vintage, it's clean, has that time capsule feel. It's reasonably priced for the LA area. You can get a room for $95 to $130 per night. Still a bunch of money for a place to sleep and shower. But for LA area, pretty darn good. And the bonus is it's conveniently located within walking distance of the light rail system and great restaurants. There's one about 2 blocks down the street called Hyder Baba. It's an authentic Persian cafe. That is a treat, something really, really different. And if you go the opposite direction a few blocks, there's Caverns, a great seafood place that's been there for many, 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 many years. From Pasadena to LA, there's several, the road had different alignments. And each is peppered with little attractions and sights. One example in South Pasadena is the Fair Oaks Pharmacy. It was established in 1915 and still has an operating soda fountain. And of course, there are weird attractions like the giant chicken boy. Again, early Sunday morning, best time to drive. And the original western terminus of Route 66 is downtown, 7th and Broadway. And that's the old theater district, and it's being gentrified, if you will. The theaters are coming back. Stunning, stunning district. My last visit, I drove downtown on an almost empty Aurora Seiko Parkway and found an almost empty parking lot just a couple blocks from Grand Central Market. And I gotta stop here for a second. Grand Central Market. Holy cow. It opened in 1917. Picture this. The largest food court you can imagine. Now, add more than a century of neon signage. You got fresh produce and chocolates, fresh roasted coffee, ethnic foods from, God, all over the world, candy shops and meat markets. It is a sensory overload. And I do hope that they survive the COVID shutdowns. That in itself is worth visiting the heart of downtown Los Angeles. I want to tell you something too about the Aurora Seiko Parkway. A little congested, as you can imagine, during busy times. It was renamed the Pasadena Freeway in 1954. It has the only tunnels on Route 66. It opened on December 1st, 1940, and was California's first limited access freeway. And it is the only national scenic byway fully encompassed by a major metropolitan area. After 1936, Route 66 was extended west to Santa Monica through Hollywood and Beverly Hills. And needless to say, lots and lots to see on that drive. And we're getting close to the end of this, so I want to wrap things up. And guys, I'm really sorry. I spent most of yesterday morning putting together a great slideshow presentation for you. What can I say? There was a campaign in the 1950s to brand Route 66 as the Will Rogers Highway. And this was linked to the release of the movie, The Will Rogers Story, starring Will Rogers Jr. and a promotional Route 66 campaign initiated by the U.S. Highway 66 Association. The ceremony at the western end of the highways created a bit of confusion in the modern era. A monument dedicated to Will Rogers was placed at Palisades Park overlooking the Santa Monica Pier. And this is actually several blocks from the actual terminus of Route 66. And there's also confusion about the pier itself. That stems from an Into the Trail 66 sign that was first put up as a movie stunt decades ago. The pier is also several blocks from the western terminus. But let's be honest, who's going to drive all the way from Chicago and stop at a nondescript intersection when the exciting pier and ocean are just a couple blocks away? I know this brings us to the end of our Route 66 series, and it was a condensed adventure, and I try not to run overtime with every program, and I don't want to wear out my welcome, and I'm not sure how long people can sit still and listen to me beat my gums. And a bit time consuming, to be honest. Yesterday, most of these programs, especially the slideshow, almost a full day of preparation. No complaints. I enjoy sharing the adventure, and I enjoy telling people where to go. Right now, I'm puzzling over how to share this presentation, the slideshow. Trying to figure out how to do that, but I'll come up with something. Stay tuned. Don't go away. Okay, our trivia contest. We didn't have a winner last week. The answer was, we were talking about a movie filmed along the Route 66 corridor before it was Route 66 in western Arizona. The answer was the Harry Carey, who starred Ace of the Saddle, 1919. The picture was filmed near Hackberry, Arizona, and in Truxton Canyon. And now, today's trivia question. A little something from California. The first right answer will receive a signed copy of my book, 100 Things to Do on Route 66 Before You Die. Are you ready? There's an old motel along Route 66 in California that was built mostly from discarded railroad ties. Do you know the name of the motel and what town it's in? I want to give a quick shout out to the One Stop Shop, onestop66.com. It's an online flea market of Route 66 merchandise from business owners all along the Route 66 corridor, as well as authors, artists, and photographers. And now they have a great line of Route 66 Centennial products. Next week on Coffee with Jim, I'm not sure exactly what we're going to do. This kind of derailed me this week. But I'd like to talk about books, Route 66 events, this Route 66 Centennial. But stay tuned. I'll keep you posted on that. I hope you'll be able to join us. I hope we don't have technical difficulties. Invite your friends and, well, let's make it a coffee party. As I wrap this up, how about a little bit of shameless self-promotion? Autographed copies of my books are available on our website, jimhinckleysamerica.com. And I'll have to remind you that this program and many of our projects are made possible through the magic of crowdfunding on the Patreon platform. We aren't much for asking for handouts or donations, so in exchange for your support, I provide a lot of content exclusive on a very regular basis. Before I bid adios, let's see who we got and any questions we can. Andy, it's not too bad today. It's about 30, 35, wind and rain. I mentioned this previously, Frank, but the coldest I've ever experienced was working up north along Superior. It was an honest-to-God, no wind chill, 40 below. Sandra, good morning. I'm so sorry we couldn't get a better production for you this morning, but I got some things we're going to do. But it's always good to have you join us. Good morning, Harley. Daniel, good morning. I'm not going to touch that line, Louis. Several inches in Uranus today. Brian, I say, it seems like cold is the thing of the day. Bitterly cold in the UK as well. Poopy happens. You know, it does. Yep. Maggie, face problems. Imagine that. Well, good morning from sunny Italy. At least I hope it's sunny in Italy. Keith, good morning. It's turning out to be a heck of a winter for most of the folks in this country. It's a dry heat. You know, people tell me that all the time, that it's a dry heat, and I always remind them that so is the oven. You know, on a serious note, I do not have, I'm a desert rat. I don't even own a short sleeve shirt. String and tin can reliable. You know, the good thing about having all these problems with technology and things of that nature, we don't have to look for an excuse to drink. Good morning, Mr. Bill. Jerry, good morning from Germany. How are you? Angela, good morning. Angela, she's familiar with technical difficulties. If you go to Angela Moreland's page, I posted yesterday, she was doing a walkthrough through the hotel and she had a little issue, but she was picked right up again with it, but I wasn't able to share the second part of the video. So if you go to Angela Moreland's page, you can get a video walkthrough of the historic Cactus Motel in McLean, Texas. You can see the tremendous work that they've been putting into renovating this property. And it's on my list. Next trip on Route 66, I'll be staying in McLean, Texas, and having dinner at the Red River Steakhouse. Oh, I like enchiladas too, my friend. Yes. Well, Brian, thank you. Yeah, I'm sorry the slideshow didn't work, but we got something coming up. Don't miss. Stay tuned with Jim Hinckley's America. We'll do this the old-fashioned way. Mr. Nolan. Well, very good. It's actually the El Rancho Motel. Close enough. Close enough for government work. We have a winner. Just keep the food coming. Well, and telling stories. Telling stories is what I do. I have been told, I can tell these stories for hours, even if I'm the only one in the room, and still enjoy myself. Oh, there's quite a lot. Missed in the sections of Essex. You've got Essex, Cadiz Summit, Chambliss. You can backtrack from Amboy, part of it. You can get, I've been told you can get through Nolan on Route 66. They don't recommend it, and California DOT does not. They get upset, and it requires crossing some pretty sandy spots, a Jeep basically. Angela, you weren't able to share it on the Cactus Inn Facebook page. Well, I couldn't share it to Jim Hinckley's America either. But let's talk about that. I got some ideas. And I got some ideas on that. But hey, check out Angela's page. Go to Angela Moreland and check out her page. She did a great walkthrough showing the newly renovated rooms at the historic Cactus Motel in my favorite part of Route 66. I've got to be honest, I'm really partial to what they call the 160 miles of smiles. Route 66 between Seligman and Topak, Arizona. And I don't think a one-eyed blind man can take a bad photograph, especially when you're driving up through Oatman. I've been told Stevie Wonder was a good photographer out there. And part of it is, it's where I grew up. It's where I learned to drive. It's where I fell in love with the desert. My first paying job up at Ed's camp. While I've been talking to you, I've been giving some thought on how to do this. What I'm going to do is post in the individual slides as posts on our Facebook page. And we'll do that over the next few days. So if you can just keep checking back, I'll have the pictures up for you. We'll do a virtual extended tour, if you will, along Route 66 in California. Well, Andy, it's funny you should mention that Route 66 running through Bullhead. There was a survey done in the late 40s, before the bypass was done of Oatman. They actually surveyed a course for Route 66. It would have basically followed Highway 93 out of Kingman over Coyote Pass, and then followed 68 down to the river, crossed the river near where Davis Dam, and when it went up the other hill, and it would connected with I-15, 466 over by Baker, California. For reasons unknown, the survey was done, everything was ready to go, it was abandoned, and they instead rerouted the highway through Yucca and Needles. And then that survey was dusted off, Andy, and it was actually going to do I-40 that direction. Would have been over Coyote Pass, Union Pass, and then connecting with I-15 over towards Baker. Yeah, please, folks, keep checking the page. Invite your friends. I'm going to post all the slides. We'll get them all up, and we'll do it that way this week. And next week, we'll do something a little better, hopefully. Lord be willing, the creek don't rise. I got lots of live stream programs that I'm working on and hoping to get some things going. I'm using the crowdfunding initiative right now to purchase some new camera equipment. The new GoPro system is pretty impressive. I was out working with Steve, My Marketing Designs. There's a great drone out. It's not overly expensive, about $500. So we're going to be pushing the crowdfunding a little bit, raise funds on that. And of course, we've got room for advertisers. Angela, I'll be in touch, and we'll see if we can help you get the video going. Folks, thank you for your patience. Stay tuned. 10-15 minutes, we'll start getting these slides up for you. Okay? Thank you very much, folks. It's always great to see everybody. We'll do this again next week. Coffee with Jim, 7 o'clock Sunday morning. Vaya con Dios, mi amigos. Adios.